An overheard conversation can completely ruin your life. The main character becomes an accidental witness to a conversation, from which he learns that his wife has been cheating on him for a long time. Will revenge bring relief to his life? Or will he forgive the cheaters and live a happy life? Now we'll find out. Kyle, do you need anything from the kitchen? Emma's voice rang out, her forced cheerfulness more noticeable than ever. That strained, overly bright tone had become our new normal, a thin veneer of politeness hiding what was crumbling beneath the surface. I looked at the motorcycle engine in front of me, focusing on it rather than her voice, which irritated me more with each passing day. No, I don't need anything, I replied evenly, trying to keep my calm. The garage had become my refuge, a place where I could ignore how bad things had gotten between us. The familiar smell of oil and grease filled the air, bringing me a strange sense of comfort. Working with my hands gave me a feeling of control that I hadn't felt in a long time, especially in our marriage. For months, Emma and I had been growing apart, but I chalked it up to the natural course of things after 35 years of marriage. People change, right? You can't expect everything to stay the same after so much time. Our daughter Ava was home for the weekend, which didn't happen often due to her busy schedule. It was nice to have her here, though her presence didn't ease the tension in the house. I had hoped it might help, but no. I wiped the oil from my hands and reached for a bottle of water, taking a slow sip. The garage door was slightly open, letting in a gentle breeze. From where I stood, I could hear the clatter of dishes as Emma and Ava moved about the kitchen. Their voices buzzed softly in the background, an easy conversation between mother and daughter. I leaned against the motorcycle and listened, allowing their chatter to temporarily replace the heavy silence that often filled our home. Mom, do you want me to chop the vegetables? Ava asked. Yes, please, and pass me the olive oil. Emma's reply sounded perfectly normal, as if nothing had changed between us. As I tightened a bolt on the engine, my mind wandered. Maybe I had missed something. Sure, Emma had become more distant, but I kept telling myself we'd work things out like we always did. But there was something gnawing at me, something I'd been ignoring for too long. Maybe I'm just getting old, losing touch. Ava's laughter echoed through the garage, light and carefree, and I smiled slightly. Her presence didn't fix the growing rift between Emma and me, but it offered some temporary comfort. I bent over the engine again, trying to lose myself in the work, when Emma's voice changed. It was quieter now, more serious, almost secretive. Ava, I need to tell you something. My hand froze in midair, the wrench hovering over the engine. I held my breath, listening. I didn't plan to tell you this now, Emma said quietly, her voice barely audible but clear enough for me to hear. But I have someone else. He's nothing like your father. He's everything I've been missing. Her words cut through the air, freezing me in place, and my world teetered on the edge of a truth I wasn't ready to face. A sudden, sharp jolt pierced through me, freezing me in place. My body refused to move, and even my breath seemed to be stuck in my throat as her words began to register in my mind. A real man? Who could she possibly be talking about? What do you mean? Not like Dad? Ava asked, her voice light, as if they were discussing something trivial. Emma chuckled quietly, bitterly. Your father. Let's just say he's nothing compared to the man I'm with now. Her words were laced with an unsettling glee. He's strong, confident, and oh my God, what he can do in bed. He's a real alpha male, not like your weak father. A wave of heat surged over me, rage rapidly building, but I stayed put, hoping, praying that this was some kind of sick joke. I tried to convince myself that Emma couldn't be serious, but then she laughed again, her voice brimming with smug satisfaction. And the best part? He can go 5 times a night without even breaking a sweat. She sounded so proud, as if she were bragging about an accomplishment. He gives me everything your father never could. The key I was holding dug into my palm as I gripped it tighter, the cold metal cutting into my skin. 5 times? You're joking, right? Ava asked, though there wasn't surprise in her voice, just mild curiosity. That sounds crazy. It's true, Emma responded, her voice filled with pride. "And I'm leaving your father. He doesn't know it yet, but I'm taking the house, the money, everything." A brief silence followed, and the clinking of dishes ceased. "Thanks, Mom," Ava said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Sounds wonderful. I'd love to meet him." I stood there, unable to move, crushed by the weight of her words. Divorce, the house, everything. This wasn't just an affair. It was the complete destruction of everything I had built for them, everything I had sacrificed. Ava's cheerful voice cut through my swirling thoughts. "Maybe we could all go on a trip together," she joked. Emma laughed as if they were planning a vacation and not the complete dismantling of my life. "Oh, trust me, honey, when we're done, your father won't even know what hit him." I couldn't listen anymore. My fists clenched, my nails digging into my palms, and my vision blurred with fury. Without thinking, I stormed through the garage into the house, slamming the door so hard it screeched with a deafening sound. The kitchen, where my wife and daughter had been casually planning my destruction, was just a few steps away, and I covered the distance in seconds. As soon as I entered, the laughter died abruptly, like someone had cut a wire. Both of them froze. Emma, my wife of the last 35 years, stood still, a knife in hand, her face frozen in shock. Ava, our daughter, leaned against the counter, her relaxed, carefree posture now replaced with stunned silence. Their shocked faces mirrored my own disbelief. They hadn't expected to be caught, and now the truth was plain in their eyes. "Dad," Ava muttered, her voice trembling as if she were trying to maintain some semblance of control. "This isn't what you think. It's not how it looks." I interrupted her, my voice cold, boiling with rage. "What exactly am I wrong about? That your mother is seeing another man, or that she's planning to take everything I've built?" Ava's lips moved, but no sound came out. She looked completely lost, while Emma hesitantly stepped forward, as though approaching a wild animal. "Let's just sit down and talk about this." Emma's voice was tense with restrained emotion. "You've got it all wrong. You don't know what's really going on." "Don't you dare," I growled, pointing at her, my voice rising. "Don't even try to twist this. I heard every word." The silence that followed was unbearable, thick with betrayal. Emma slowly put the knife she had been holding down on the table, her hands trembling. "I was going to tell you," she whispered, her voice fragile. "I just didn't know how." "Didn't know how," I repeated, disbelief dripping from my words. "So instead of talking to me, your husband, you confided in our daughter? You schemed behind my back to destroy everything I've built? That was your choice?" Emma couldn't meet my gaze, her eyes fixed on the floor. Ava stood beside her, arms crossed, trying to distance herself as if she weren't part of this betrayal. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely audible. "Mom didn't mean for it to be this way, Dad. She's been unhappy for a long time." A bitter laugh escaped me, hollow and sharp. "Unhappy? And this is her answer? To cheat, to plan to take everything from me? And you support this?" Ava bit her lip, her gaze shifting aside, avoiding mine. "It's not that simple, Dad. You're never around. You're always working or hiding in the garage. Mom needed someone." A storm of anger welled up inside me, tightening my chest. "So because I work to provide for this family, that justifies her betrayal? That makes what she's done acceptable?" "Kyle, it's not like that," Emma pleaded, stepping closer. "I never wanted to hurt you." "Stop lying!" I roared, slamming my fist on the table, the sound echoing through the tense room. The room filled with a sharp clap, so loud that it felt like it hit both of us physically, making us flinch. "You were ready to take everything from me, down to the last drop, and you didn't even care how it would destroy me," I said, my voice laced with pure pain. Emma's face twisted in anguish. "I wasn't planning to take everything. I thought I'd leave you something," she muttered weakly. I couldn't help but laugh, a bitter, hollow sound that filled the space between us. "Leave me something?" I scoffed. "After 35 years you think all I deserve is a scrap? A tiny remnant of what we built?" My words hung in the air, dripping with contempt. "And you think I should be grateful for that?" Emma's eyes filled with tears, but it didn't move me. I had long since lost any compassion for her. After everything I'd learned, there was no going back. She reached out to me, desperately trying to close the growing chasm between us, but I recoiled, refusing to let her come near. Every word I spoke only deepened the divide between us. "Kyle, please, we can still work something out. I don't want it to end like this," she said, her voice trembling with desperation. "Work something out?" I repeated in disbelief, my tone sharp. "It's too late, Emma. That ship sailed when you made your choice." I turned then, my gaze landing on our daughter Ava. "And you, Ava? You're just going to stand there and watch this happen? Are you really going to let her do this to me? After everything I've done for you?" Ava's eyes dropped to the floor, guilt written all over her face. "I didn't think it would go this far," she began, her voice barely audible, but I cut her off before she could finish. "But you didn't stop it, did you?" My voice was harsh, unforgiving. "You stood by and let it happen." The silence that followed felt suffocating, as if the air had thickened with all that was left unsaid. Emma's tears now flowed freely, but I couldn't summon any pity for her. She had made her choice, and now she had to face the consequences. "You want the house? The money?" My voice was cold, emotionless. "Take it. Take everything. But know this, you lost far more today than you can imagine. You lost me." Emma's sobs grew louder, but I had no patience left to listen. I turned away from her, unwilling to hear another word. Ava just stood there, pale and motionless, as everything crumbled around her. I looked at both of them, my voice quiet but dangerous. "You think this is the end? You think you've won?" I leaned in closer, my words dripping with menace. "You have no idea what I'm capable of." It was clear now. There was no reaching them. Their faces told the truth. The remorse they felt wasn't for what they'd done. It was only because they got caught. Emma's contemptuous nickname, Alpha Male, echoed in my mind, stinging like a slap. Every late night, every sacrifice, every plan for the future, it was all in vain. The home we built, the life we shared, now felt like a cruel joke. I had become her target. Standing there in the kitchen, the silence was so thick it felt like I couldn't breathe. Ava stood frozen, as if the blood had drained from her face, leaving only shock in its place. Emma, on the other hand, swung between panic and defiance, her face a storm of emotions. They believed it would all blow over, that I'd eventually cool down and forgive them. How wrong they were. "You want the house?" I asked. "And the money?" My voice was eerily calm, catching them off guard. But beneath the surface I was barely holding on, inside boiling with rage, the fire of anger threatening to consume me. "You'll get nothing." Emma's face twisted in confusion, her brow furrowing as she tried to comprehend my words. "Kyle, we need to talk about this," she said, her voice softening, as if her gentleness could fix what was already broken. "You're being unreasonable." My eyes locked with hers, cold and unyielding, freezing her mid-sentence. "No," I replied, my voice as cold as ice. "I'm far more reasonable than you deserve." With that, I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving her words hanging in the air. I heard a sharp gasp behind me as Emma finally grasped the seriousness of the situation. Ava remained silent, unsure how to react, her presence barely noticeable. I headed for my office, my hands already reaching for the drawer. It opened easily, and inside was a folder with all our financial documents, the papers I had meticulously organized over the years. Emma had always left the finances to me. That was her first mistake. My fingers danced over the keyboard, accessing our joint accounts. Years of savings, plans for what I thought was our shared future. With a few keystrokes, it was all gone. Every penny was transferred in seconds to a separate account I had quietly prepared years ago, a contingency fund I never thought I'd need. "Kyle, what are you doing?" Emma's voice cut through the silence, but I ignored her. My phone vibrated, slicing through the tension. The first notification confirmed the transfer's completion. The second followed. Emma's personal account was empty too. She lunged toward me, her eyes wide with panic as she tried to peer at the screen. Her breathing became erratic, short, and finally she realized what had happened. "No! Kyle, stop!" she shrieked, her voice rising with fear. I stood up, turning to face her. You thought you could take everything from me? The house, the money? Her voice trembled. Kyle, please, she begged, reaching out as if her touch could erase the damage she'd done. We can fix this. I made a mistake, but we can fix it. I slowly shook my head and walked past her without so much as a glance. There's nothing left to fix. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, the place where I had spent countless nights beside the woman who had been plotting against me the whole time. With a sharp jerk, I flung open the closet doors. My eyes skimmed over the rows of designer clothes, each item a silent testament to the lifestyle I had provided for her all these years. Bags, shoes, every detail symbolized the luxury she had enjoyed because of me. Without hesitation, I grabbed handfuls of clothing and threw them down the stairs as if they were trash. It wasn't just about the material things, it was what they represented. Now Emma stood behind me, her voice rising with desperation as she watched everything she valued crumble. Kyle, stop, she pleaded. We can still talk this through, fix everything, she continued. But there was no longer any point in saying anything. There was no need to shout. My cold, calculated actions spoke louder than any words. Then I reached for her jewelry box, turning it over. The sound of falling diamonds and gold echoed through the house, adding to the pile of expensive items already at the bottom of the stairs. I moved methodically, heading towards the backyard. The fire pit, once used for quiet evenings, now served a different purpose. I doused the growing pile with gasoline, the sharp smell filling the air. Emma followed me, her face pale and her eyes wide with shock. No, no, please, she cried, her tears flowing as I stood with a lit match in hand. I looked at her one last time. This was the woman I had loved for over 35 years, the same woman who betrayed me in a way I could never forget. Without saying a word, I dropped the match onto the pile. The flame flared up instantly, consuming the clothes, jewelry, and everything they symbolized with a fury that mirrored the rage inside me. Emma collapsed to the ground, sobbing as she watched her treasures turn to ashes. Kyle, I'm begging you, she murmured, her voice trembling with desperation, but her cries only strengthened my resolve. You wanted it all, Emma. Now you have nothing. I turned away from her, leaving without looking back. Inside, on the living room couch, Ava sat motionless. Her face had gone pale, her eyes wide open as she began to understand what had happened. Unlike her mother, she wasn't crying. No, she was in shock, finally grasping the consequences of her decisions. Dad, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't want this. I didn't realize. I stopped in front of her, my expression cold and unyielding. You knew what was happening. You went along with it. Ava's mouth opened, but no words came out. She saw it in my eyes. There was no forgiveness, no mercy left. Get out of my house, I said calmly, leaving no room for argument. Both of you. Ava's voice quivered, fear beginning to take hold of her. Where are we supposed to go? She asked, realizing the full gravity of the situation. I don't care, I cut in, turning sharply and leaving without looking back. You're not staying here, I stated, as Emma staggered in, her face smeared with tears. She clutched at her sides, as if trying to keep herself from falling apart. Kyle, please, we have nowhere to go. We can fix everything, I swear we can fix it. I shook my head slowly, my movements deliberate and measured. You made your choice, I replied, devoid of warmth in my voice. Without giving them a single glance, I walked away, knowing it was the last time I would see them. Now they had nothing, no money, no home, and certainly no future with me. They thought they had won, that they could leave unscathed. But they didn't understand what I was capable of when pushed to the limit. This was my reckoning. Morning light filtered through the blinds, casting long shadows across the room as I sat quietly at the kitchen table, replaying the events of the past few days over and over in my mind. The house was eerily silent, the weight of yesterday's chaos hanging like a heavy cloud. Today was the day to say goodbye to the past. Emma and Ava spent the night in a cheap, shabby motel after being thrown out, leaving me alone in the house for the first time in years. The silence, though unsettling, brought with it a strange sense of peace. I rose from the table and headed to the garage. Emma's car was parked in the driveway, still gleaming. A gift from me on an anniversary that now seemed like another lifetime. Without hesitation, I picked up the phone and dialed the dealership. "I have a car I want to sell," I said as soon as the representative answered the call. "Bring it by this afternoon," came the quick reply. "We'll pay cash." By noon, the dealership representative was at my place, and I handed over the keys in exchange for a thick envelope. He didn't ask any questions. He wasn't interested in the story, just business. I stood by the door watching as the car disappeared down the street. The expected satisfaction didn't come. Instead, there was only a hollow, numb feeling, a whisper of victory. But it was a necessary step. I returned to the house, mentally preparing for the next task, the bank accounts. Emma had always trusted me to manage the finances, never bothering to keep tabs. She would soon learn the cost of that trust. Sitting at my desk, I accessed the banking app, and with a few quick taps, transferred almost all the money into an account registered in my name. I left them just enough to last a couple of weeks, enough time for them to figure out their next move. After that, they would be on their own. This was no longer about revenge. It was a statement. They no longer had any power over me. They could cry, they could beg, but I was no longer going to listen. I was no longer a pawn in their game. That evening, they returned. Desperation was written on their faces. I heard a knock on the door and opened it, but didn't let them inside. "Kyle?" Emma's voice was barely audible, her eyes swollen and red from tears. "We need to talk." "We talked yesterday," I replied in a cold, detached tone. "What more is there to say?" Ava, with a trembling voice, pleaded, "We have nowhere else to go." I stood, arms crossed, leaning against the doorframe, my gaze as cold as it had been the day before. "You made your choice," I replied sharply, devoid of any warmth. "Now you will face its consequences." "Kyle, please, we'll end up on the street." Emma's voice trembled, her eyes filled with tears she was trying to hold back. "We've lost everything." "It's no longer my problem," I responded emotionlessly. "You had everything and you squandered it. Now nothing is left." Ava looked at me, disbelief clouding her face. "But I'm your daughter," she whispered, her voice filled with despair. I met her gaze, feeling bitterness flare up inside me. "You made your choice too," I replied evenly. "You sided with your mother, supported her. You betrayed me just the same." The silence that followed those words was almost unbearable, filled with unspoken pain. Emma wiped the tears from her face, her voice barely audible. "We have nowhere to go. We have no money." They looked at me, hoping that I would soften, that guilt would make me change my mind. But I couldn't, not after everything. I shook my head slowly but firmly. "You'll figure something out. You always did." Without saying another word, I turned away and shut the door in front of them with such finality that the sound echoed through the silence. Muffled sobs of Emma came through the door, but I didn't stop. I was leaving, and the sound of her crying grew fainter. It was the price of their betrayal. Days passed, and as I had expected, Emma turned to her lover. She and Ava gathered their remaining belongings and moved in with him, hoping to start a new life from scratch. But as his wealth dwindled, so did his attachment to them. I wasn't surprised when a week later Emma called me, her voice filled with despair. She told me how he had thrown them out onto the streets, leaving them without a home and means to survive. I didn't answer her calls. Her voicemail messages became increasingly desperate with each passing day, but I didn't listen to any. My decision was final, and there was no turning back. Meanwhile, I focused on piecing my life back together. I sold the house, moved far away from the remnants of betrayal that still hung in the air. I severed all ties with Emma and Ava. They made their choice, and now they had to face its consequences. Yet, in the silence of the night, those long, dark nights, sorrow and anger returned. I sat alone in my new home, the silence pressing down, and memories crept back into my mind. The betrayal replayed in my head over and over, like an endless reel of pain. The words Emma once said to Ava about her lover still echoed in my head. The way she indifferently dismissed any thoughts of how it might affect me. It was cold, and heartless. Yet, I decided to stop dwelling on it. Their actions could no longer control my emotions. Over time, I heard rumors about the troubles Emma and Ava faced. They sought help, but without money and resources, they had to manage on their own. Ava distanced herself from her mother's lover, realizing too late that he had never truly cared for her. They moved from one unstable home to another, surviving as best they could. It wasn't the future they had envisioned, but it was the reality they had to face. I felt no satisfaction from their suffering. Revenge was never my goal. For me, it was about regaining control over my own life, refusing to be a victim of their deceit. They lived with the consequences of their decisions, and I had finally found my freedom. For the first time in a long while, that was enough. The months that followed were filled with peace. My new life became quieter, simpler. Although the scars from their betrayal remained, I began to find solace in solitude. The past gradually became a distant memory, a chapter closed forever. I had no desire to return to it, neither because of Emma nor because of Ava. One evening, after a long and exhausting day, I came home, soaked from the rain. On the kitchen counter lay a small stack of letters, nothing unusual. As I sorted through the usual bills and junk mail, my hand froze on a plain white envelope. No return address, only my name written in trembling handwriting that I recognized immediately. It was Ava. I stood and stared at the envelope, gripping it tightly in my hand. Part of me wanted to tear it up and throw it away where it belonged, but something held me back. Slowly, I sat at the table and opened it. The sound of rain tapping against the window seemed to remind me of the storm I had so diligently tried to leave behind. Dad, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, and I don't blame you for that. But please, if you can, just read this. I'm trying to make things right. I'm working, living with friends, doing everything I can to get back on my feet. I made terrible mistakes and never wanted to hurt you. I was wrong, so wrong, and now I understand that. Mom and I barely talk. She's living with some distant relative, and I don't know where her path will lead. But I have to answer for my actions. I'm not expecting your forgiveness, but I hope you'll give me a chance to meet with you, just once, so I can apologize in person. I'm sorry, Dad. Love, Ava. I read the letter again, my thoughts in turmoil. Ava trying to apologize after all that. It seemed unreal. Part of me wanted to believe her, but another part, still fresh from the pain of betrayal, wanted to close the door to any possibility of reconciliation. I placed the letter back on the table, unsure of what to do next. The next day, it still lay there, staring at me like a question waiting for an answer. I tried to go about my daily life, but her words lingered in my thoughts. I couldn't stop wondering whether she was sincere. Was this her attempt to make amends for what she had done, or just another act of manipulation? After days of wrestling with my thoughts, I made a decision. I agreed to meet with her, not because I was ready to forgive, but because I needed to hear everything directly from her. I had to see her face, look into her eyes, and understand if she had truly changed. If not, at least I would be able to leave knowing I had done everything I could. I called the number she had left in her letter, and we arranged to meet. We chose a quiet cafe. On the day of the meeting, I walked in, bracing myself for the worst, and scanned the room until I saw her sitting in the corner. She looked different, thinner, with her hair loosely tied back. There was a weariness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. As I approached, she stood up, nervously fiddling with her fingers. "Dad," she whispered, her voice nearly drowned out by the cafe's noise. I nodded slightly but remained silent. I sat down across from her, placing my hands on the table. She hesitated a bit before sitting down, avoiding eye contact until she finally met my gaze. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly, her voice trembling. I didn't respond immediately, letting the silence hang between us. "So," I finally said, breaking the silence, "you wanted to apologize." She took a deep breath before replying. "Yes. I know that no words can fix what I've done. I was selfish and caused you pain that I can never fully explain." Her words hung in the air between us. At the time, I didn't understand it, but now, every day I regret my actions. I regret letting Mom manipulate me. I regret causing you pain. I stared at her, trying to detect any hint of deceit in her face. It's not just that you let her manipulate you, Ava. You were complicit. You encouraged it. You laughed at it. My words hit her hard, and she flinched, tears welling up in her eyes. I know, she whispered, her voice trembling with remorse. I was foolish. I thought I was doing what was right for myself, but I was too absorbed in my own world to see the damage I was causing, and because of that, she paused, wiping her tears. I lost everything. You, Mom, everything. I sighed heavily, feeling anger bubbling inside me. What do you expect from me, Ava? I asked, my voice full of irritation. She shook her head quickly, her face pale and looking devastated. I don't want anything, she answered softly. I just needed to apologize. I had to say it in person. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just couldn't live with myself if I didn't at least try. Her words lingered in the air as I sat in silence, absorbing them. The pain was still fresh, but beneath all that anger, something else was awakening. For a brief moment, I saw the little girl I once raised, not the woman who had shattered my world. I sighed deeply and leaned back in my chair. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive you, Ava. What you and Mom did, it broke something inside me. I'm still trying to piece together those fragments. Ava nodded slowly, her face crumpling as she tried to hold back her tears. I understand, she whispered, her voice quivering. I'm so sorry, Dad. I'll always be sorry. I stood up, pushing my chair away from the table. Take care of yourself, Ava. And with those words, I left the cafe, leaving her behind. Whether I made the right decision or not, only time would tell. But right now, I wasn't ready to let her back into my life. Some wounds take a long time to heal. Fortunately, I met a woman who had also experienced betrayal, and we found solace in each other. Months passed, and our relationship grew, healing the wounds from the betrayal. Soon, Sarah moved in with me. We got a puppy, and we cherished every day together. Ava no longer appeared, nor did Emma. But on a late autumn evening, I heard a knock on the door. It was Ava. Her eyes were red from crying, and what she said still echoes in my mind. Mom passed away. She battled cancer for a year. Since then, Ava has been visiting my home often. I try to comfort her after losing her mother, but I still haven't forgiven her. Emma was selfish. She loved the luxurious life and wasn't satisfied. She betrayed me terribly, and now she's gone. Fate played a cruel joke on her. She had everything, and now she is no more. And now, my dear viewer, it's time for the second story. Amelia Brown pulled up to her house and pressed the button to lift the garage door. As her car rolled inside, she immediately sensed something was wrong. Her husband's truck was missing from its usual spot. Maybe he took the kids out for a late dinner, she thought, though it felt a bit odd considering the time. But it was Friday, and with no school the next day, perhaps he decided to give them a rare treat to stay out late. The thought made her smile. It was nice to imagine Robert taking charge of the kids. She often felt like she was managing not just 2 children, but 3, including him. Stepping out of the car, she walked into the house. Silence greeted her. The home, usually so full of life, was eerily quiet. No sounds of the TV, no video games, just an unsettling, oppressive stillness. Wandering through the dimly lit rooms, her thoughts drifted to the evening's events with John. A brief wave of guilt washed over her, but it vanished just as quickly as it had come. Standing in the silence, she wondered, is this what her life would look like if Robert ever left? The thought made her pause, but only for a moment, before she quietly laughed. No, she reassured herself. If Robert had ever planned to leave, he would have done it by now. She had been seeing John for over a year, and Robert had never once questioned her growing list of excuses. At first, her meetings with John were sporadic, just once a week. But now their affair had escalated to 5 times a week, including Saturdays, and Robert hadn't shown any signs of suspicion. Amelia sensed that Robert might have some inkling of what was going on, but he never brought it up, not even when she lied about going to a conference for the weekend. The truth? She had been with John at one of his work events as his guest, and now they were planning a week-long cruise together. All they needed was another believable excuse to keep Robert in the dark. As she entered the bedroom, she undressed and headed for the shower. She wanted to wash away any trace of John, just in case Robert came home and sought intimacy. He hadn't shown much interest in her lately, but it was better to be prepared. You never know what might happen. After the shower, she climbed into bed, feeling the exhaustion gradually take over. The remnants of her time with John slowly faded as sleep consumed her. The next morning, Amelia woke up expecting to see Robert beside her, but his side of the bed remained untouched. Frowning, she listened for sounds in the house, but only silence responded. Maybe they're outside, she thought. Wrapping herself in a robe, she wandered through the house, calling out for them, but no one answered. A sense of unease began to grow. She peered out the windows, hoping to spot Robert and the kids in the yard, but it was eerily still. Her chest tightened as panic started to set in. She rushed through every room, shouting her husband's and children's names, but found no trace of them. Hurrying to the garage, she saw that Robert's truck was still gone. Her heart pounded as she sprinted upstairs to the closet, and froze. Robert's clothes were gone. His toiletries, too, had disappeared. In a panic, she dashed into the children's rooms, but their things were missing as well. With trembling hands, Amelia grabbed the phone and dialed Robert's number, desperately trying to get answers. But when the voicemail informed her that the number was no longer in service, the ground beneath her seemed to disappear, and her world began to collapse. Amelia felt a sudden wave of panic engulf her. No, this can't be happening," she muttered under her breath, frantically reaching for her phone. With trembling hands, she dialed Robert's parents, hoping they could clarify what was going on. The phone rang, and when Margaret, Robert's mother, answered, Amelia tried to steady herself. "Hi, Margaret. It's Amelia. Have you heard from Robert or the kids lately by any chance?" Margaret's voice carried a note of concern. "No, I haven't heard anything. Why? Has something happened?" Amelia's voice quivered as she replied, "I got home late last night and they weren't here. At first, I thought Robert had just taken the kids out for dinner, but they never came back. I tried calling him, but his phone is no longer in service. It says the number has been disconnected." A brief silence hung between them before Margaret spoke again, uncertainty lacing her words. "I don't know what to tell you. Maybe you should call the police and report them missing." Amelia swallowed hard, nodding as if Margaret could see her. "Yes, I think you're right. Thanks." She ended the call, her hands still shaking slightly as she headed to the kitchen to make coffee, hoping the familiar action would calm her. But then her eyes landed on something that made her freeze. Next to the coffee maker lay an envelope, and on top of it, Robert's wedding ring. A wave of dread washed over her as she reached for the envelope, her fingers trembling. Inside was a neatly folded letter, typed and impersonal. Amelia sank into a chair, forgetting about the coffee, and began to read the note. "Amelia, if you haven't realized it by now, I've left. The kids are with me, and they're safe. You probably don't even remember, but last Friday was our 29th wedding anniversary. Instead of spending it with me, you chose to be with John Smith. I'd like to say I'm surprised, but it's just another important family moment you discarded without a second thought. Last month, you missed Oliver's 15th birthday. I tried to make excuses for you, telling him you were busy with work. But I knew where you were. You weren't working, you were in Smith's bed. The same thing happened on Tracy's birthday 5 months ago. You couldn't even be there for her, and she was crushed when I told her you had other commitments. Do you remember when Oliver got injured at football practice a month ago? The school called you, but you didn't answer. I later found out why. You weren't at some meeting. You were with Smith again, this time in a hotel. I hired a private investigator and he confirmed everything. Yes, Amelia, I've known about your affair for a long time. And here's something that will hurt you even more. The kids know too. They noticed your absences and figured out all the lies. I even know about that so-called conference and the cruise you're planning with Smith at the end of this year. Well, you won't need to lie to me anymore. You made your choice, and it's clear this affair is more important to you than your family. I had hoped that one day you'd realize what you were doing and come back to us, to me, to the kids. Maybe we could have salvaged something. But you've been emotionally absent for a long time, and now I've made my decision. I'm leaving, and I'm taking the kids. Since you couldn't be bothered to put them first, I will do it for you. Expect divorce papers at your workplace. Yes, I'm filing for divorce on grounds of adultery. It's recognized in this state. I'm also suing John for alienation of affection, and that's legal here too. This isn't about money, it's about justice. The letter slipped from her hands, and her head spun as if the entire world had collapsed beneath her, leaving her falling into a dark, endless void. I taught the children that actions have consequences. Since you've chosen to prioritize your relationship with Smith over our family, frequently leaving the kids with me 4 nights a week to be with him, I am filing for full custody. Additionally, you might be required to pay child support. Given your income, I am not asking for spousal support. I won't prevent you from seeing the children, but you'll have to take care of yourself and cover all travel expenses. We are moving to another country. I've accepted a promotion and will now lead our company's operations in Italy for the next 10 years. I had hoped we could celebrate this significant moment together, but you continually chose nights with Smith, and we never had the opportunity to share this occasion. In my desk, you will find a signed deed transfer. The house is now yours, along with half of our joint accounts. I've removed myself from any remaining financial obligations. From now on, it's all up to you. Enjoy. But keep in mind, if you choose to contest the divorce, you might find yourself at the center of the next big scandal. Alongside the deed, you'll find a collection of explicit photographs of you and Smith. These images are only a small portion of the material captured during your meetings. I wish I could say that the last 20 years were incredible, but they weren't. The first 9 were good. I gave you all my love, but apparently it wasn't enough for you. In the last 2 years, you grew distant, and despite my efforts to reconnect, you only gave weak excuses for your absence. You might have noticed that I stopped trying to be close to you some time ago. The truth is, the very thought that I came second to you disgusted me. Maybe you thought I was indifferent to your affair because I didn't interfere. You know I would never raise a hand to you or try to control your choices. That's simply not who I am. But you need to understand that you hurt me far more than you realize, and that's something I'll never fully get over. So please don't give me empty cliches or insincere apologies. Throughout all the years of our marriage, the thought of cheating never crossed my mind. You and the children were always my priority. But for the past few years, you've been absent from our lives. Now we are the ones leaving you. I hope your choice was worth it. Don't try to contact me or the kids. If they want to talk to you, I'll let them make that decision. But be warned, they aren't very happy with you right now. If you need to reach me, do so through my lawyer. His contact information is enclosed. Goodbye, Amelia. Robert simply signed the letter. Tears welled up in Amelia's eyes as she carefully folded the letter back into the envelope. She picked up Robert's lawyer's business card and placed it on the table, promising herself to call on Monday. Then she grabbed her phone and dialed John. He picked up on the second ring. What did he do? John's voice flared with anger as Amelia explained what Robert had done. You said he was okay with all of this. She had long suspected that he knew, but he never brought it up, not once, as she had confessed. Now she was completely alone. What am I going to do now? She sobbed, tears streaming down her face. Do you want me to come over? He asked, trying to comfort her. Yes, please, she pleaded. John began driving to her house, unaware that a man was hiding a few houses down in a car, watching his every move. Thanks, Mom, Robert said, finishing his conversation with Amelia. Anytime, dear, his mother replied, hugging him tightly. Promise you'll call as soon as you get there, she insisted with concern in her voice. I will, Mom, he assured her. The children gave their grandmother one last hug before heading to the airport. For them, this was the beginning of something new and exciting. But for Robert, it was the end of his 29-year marriage to Amelia. There was still a part of him that missed her, but another part felt relieved. The last 15 months she had spent with Smith, and now that chapter of their lives was closed. It was time to move on, he thought. Soon, Amelia received the divorce papers at her office. The court messenger was far from discreet, making it clear in front of her colleagues that she was being sued for infidelity and neglecting her responsibilities. Amelia felt her face flush with shame as her co-workers looked on. John Smith didn't escape unscathed either, receiving notice of a lawsuit for alienation of affection. When Amelia reached out to Robert's lawyer, he bluntly told her to either sign the papers or hire her own attorney. After consulting with several lawyers, they all said the same thing. Robert's demands were fair given the circumstances. She had no choice but to sign the papers and send them back. Meanwhile, Robert settled into his new apartment in Italy. The children were slowly adjusting to their new surroundings, quickly growing attached to their new home. Robert received an email from his lawyer confirming that Amelia had signed the divorce documents. It gave him a sense of closure, though he wasn't too thrilled that John had moved into their former family home. But it was only a matter of time, he thought. With no objections from her, the divorce was finalized in record time. The court ordered Amelia to pay a small amount for child support, although Robert didn't particularly need it. He immediately transferred the money to a college fund for the children. As for John, he settled the case with Robert's attorney without going to trial. Those funds also went into the children's trust. Over the next few years, Amelia sent Christmas and birthday cards to the children, each with a brief message. From these notes, Robert learned that she had sold the house and married John. But their marriage didn't last long. John cheated on her. Out of curiosity, Robert did some research and discovered that the woman John was involved with was also married, and her husband took it very hard. In a fit of rage, he attacked John, leaving him bedridden. The man was now serving time in prison. Robert wasn't surprised. He had always believed that cheaters rarely change. Amelia had made countless promises to visit the children, but time and time again, she failed to show up. By that time, Robert had already grown accustomed to her unreliability, and the children quickly learned not to take her words seriously. To them, her promises had become meaningless. Over time, her postcards and letters became less frequent, and after 4 years of silence, they stopped altogether. Meanwhile, Robert's life changed when he met Lily, a beautiful blonde. Less than a year into their relationship, Robert proposed. "Are you sure you want this, Robert?" Lily asked, her voice tinged with doubt. "You know I can't have children. That's why my first husband left me." Robert didn't hesitate for a second. "Your first husband was an idiot. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Lily's smile softened as she looked at him. "I love you too, Robert. I want to be with you. But what about your children? Will they accept me as part of the family?" "Let's find out together," Robert said confidently. The next day, Robert and Lily gathered the children in the living room. "Listen, my children," Robert began. "I've fallen in love with Lily and proposed to her. But before we move forward, I need to know how you feel about this. Do you agree for her to be your stepmother?" "No," Allison replied bluntly, her directness catching Lily off guard. Robert looked at his daughter in surprise. "Why?" he asked, trying to understand. "Dad," Oliver added, "it's not that we don't want her to be with us. We just don't want a stepmother. We want her to be our mom." Lily, stunned, asked, "You want me to be your mother? What about your real mom?" Allison, unwavering, answered, "She abandoned us a long time ago. If you're marrying Dad, we want you to be our mom. Can you do that?" Overcome with emotion, Lily looked at Robert, then turned to the children. She knelt down and embraced them, tears welling up in her eyes. "Of course," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It would be an honor to be your mom." 4 months later, Robert and Lily married in a small, intimate ceremony. Allison was Lily's bridesmaid, and Oliver was Robert's best man. 2 years later, the family took a short trip to the U.S. Oliver had been accepted into the Air Force Academy, and they planned to drop him off after a brief stop at Robert's parents' house, where he wanted to introduce Lily to them. Afterward, They were scheduled to meet with Robert's boss and the board of directors. After checking into the hotel, they headed to the elevator. Suddenly, a familiar voice echoed through the lobby. "Robert, is that you?" Robert froze, instantly recognizing the voice. Slowly, he turned around and saw Amelia approaching them. Time had left its mark on her. Her face had aged, and her hair had turned gray. She looked fragile, almost unrecognizable compared to the woman he once knew. Amelia heard her name being spoken, the voice catching her off guard. She turned sharply, trying to steady her breathing. "Yes, that's me," she replied, her voice wavering. "Who are these people? Are you going to introduce us?" Her gaze swept over the group standing next to him, lingering on the woman and the two children. "You really don't recognize your own children?" Robert's voice was sharp, laced with bitterness. "The ones you've ignored all this time? Not even trying to speak with them?" His words hung in the air, heavy with accusation. Amelia's eyes widened, stunned by his tone. "Oh my God," she whispered, her voice barely holding together. "You've all changed so much. You look well." Her attention shifted to the woman. "And who is this?" she asked, pointing at the stranger beside Robert. A faint smirk crossed Robert's lips. "She's our mom now," Oliver declared, his young voice carrying a slight Australian accent, filled with pride. "Her name is Lily," added Allison, "and now she's our mother." Amelia felt her breath catch, instinctively taking a step back as she tried to process what she had just heard. "Your mother?" she repeated in disbelief. "I am your mother," she stammered, her voice trembling. "No," Oliver replied firmly. "You gave birth to us, but you stopped being our mother when you left, just like you stopped being Dad's wife." It was as if she had been struck. Her face paled, and she seemed about to collapse when an elderly man in a suit rushed over to her. "Amelia, are you all right?" he asked gently, his voice full of concern. She shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks, and he carefully guided her to the nearest chair, his worried gaze darting between her and Robert's family. "And who are you people?" the man asked sharply, suspicion lacing his tone. "What have you done to her?" "We've done nothing," Robert responded calmly. "We simply reminded her of what she once had, and threw away." The man's frown deepened. "And who are you?" "Harry Murphy," the man introduced himself, extending his hand, though his posture remained protective towards Amelia. "I'm her regular client." "Client?" Robert echoed, surprise creeping into his voice. "What? I didn't know she turned to escorting." "Well, I hope she pleases you in bed. Good luck." With that, Robert turned and led Lily and the children to their rooms, leaving Amelia sobbing quietly in her seat. As they walked away, Lily looked at Robert, a question visible in her eyes. "Was she your first wife?" "Yes," Robert confirmed, without much emotion. "And honestly, I made the best choice." Lily smiled warmly, her hand slipping into his. "You absolutely did," she said softly. "Don't ever forget that." My friend, and this is the end of the story. If you liked this story, then put your royal like and subscribe to the channel. May the force be with you.